We welcome you all to a panel on Asian religious and interreligious NGOs. And we have 5 fantastic panelists here. And so in the interest of time, I'm hoping to get us started as quickly as possible. Our plan is that we'll give each of these 5 individuals 10 minutes, which is only 10 minutes, which is not nearly as long as each of them could easily take the hour. I've chatted with some of them already about their work, which is really fantastic. But 10 minutes each, which will give us 10 minutes for discussion at the end. We'll begin with in the order that it was printed in the program. So we'll start with His Excellency Sahibzada Sultan Ahmed Ali, who will be followed by Matius Home, and hopefully I pronounced your name correctly. Right? We'll have Matius followed by Dambajav. So he will be our third speaker, and then we'll have Bataa Mishigish, and then we'll have Sunggon Kim. And so we will proceed in that order. We'll have a timekeeper here, and we just really look forward to hearing from each of you during that time. Okay, Your Excellency. We encourage you to speak into the microphone for the sake of the translators.
Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to be here to attend this annual International Law and Religion Symposium at the International Center of Law and Religion at Brigham Young University. I'm very thankful to the organizers, and I congratulate them on very successful, very useful, very informative, very well-organized symposium. First, I will talk a little about the background of the UDHR. It is worth noting the background and developments before UDHR. By doing so, we can clearly understand the motives of this declaration, the human rights violations in World War I, the interwar period, and the incidents witnessed during World War II, especially the Holocaust that resulted from hate speech. Communities around the globe learned many lessons from this and came forward to adopt the historic human rights document in the form of Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And to save the time, I will skip some of the slides. Despite the existence of the UDHR and its assertion to ensure the protection of economic, social, and cultural rights at the state level, there are several multifarious issues and challenges around the world based on cultural, religious, ethnic, and local conflicts. Hatred against religious communities is unfortunately prevailing day by day in many parts of the world, whether it is be Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, hatred against LDS, or the marginalization and societal discrimination against the Dalit community in India, hatred on the basis of religion or caste is unfortunately being witnessed in all parts of the world in some shape or form. Likewise, xenophobic attitudes, especially towards migrants and refugees, also seem to be on the up and up with the rise of populism in many parts of the world. Hate against any community is strongly condemnable and therefore needs serious attention. The rising trend prejudice is visible at societal as well as state levels. The decision by the Karnataka High Court in India and the French government's recent decision to ban the hijab or abaya in educational institutions, for instance, shows the aim of discriminating against the Muslim community's religious and cultural rights. Recently, the discretion of the holy book Quran also received wide condemnation from the Muslim world as well as from the United Nations Human Rights Council through their declaration with a significant condemnation of all types of manifestations of religious hatred. It is rather chilling to read that according to a report related by Hindutva Watch, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's ruling party and affiliated groups are found to be behind most hate speech events against Muslims during the first half of this year. The question that rises here, ladies and gentlemen, is that how to develop a harmonious society based on moral values that are ingrained in human nature. So, before I end, I would like to say that we are now living in the globalized world, and from part of the world where I came from is becoming worse and worse, which it was never been. If you look at the history of Indo-Pak subcontinent, at the time we were most diverse country or the region in the world, religiously, ethnically, lingually, and by any mean. And we were living peacefully. As a Muslim community, we are there since last 1200 years. And during that, more than 800 years, Muslim rulers ruled all over the India. But during their 800 or 900 ruling period, there was not a single incident of any religious conflict. And there was no single battle fought on the basis of Hinduism or Muslim religion or with any other religion. And even the missionaries from Central Asia, those went to India to preach Islam, they became very successful. They converted a large number of the society into the new religion, to Islam. But you will be amazed to know that they are equally treated with honor and respect, not only by the Muslim communities, but by the Hindu communities. and by the Sikh communities. And the Sufi shrines are equally respected by all the religions in India. So what I want to say is, every Hindu now, every Sikh person now there in India, that they are the people who converted a vast majority of the people into Islam. But even then, they respect them a lot. So before I end, what I take the conclusion from this experience of our living together with multicultural, multi-religious societies is they respected not only their agreements and their commonalities, but they respected their differences. They honored their disagreements. So, are we ready? So we should congratulate each other. We are going to make a peaceful society. If we cannot celebrate each other's disagreements, we cannot live peacefully together. So my message is, cherish your agreements as well as cherish your disagreements. Celebrate your commonalities as well as celebrate your differences. Thank you very much.
So first of all, I want to thank the organizer, the International Center for Law and Religion Studies at BYU Law School, for inviting me to speak here. In Indonesia, some of the survey, unfortunately, affirms the trend that was detected by Pew in 2018. There was a national survey showing a high level of opinion of intolerance and radicalism of Muslim teachers in Indonesia. The survey was done among the Muslim teachers, so we don't have a data about the other religious teachers. So it doesn't mean that the other religious teachers don't have the same attitude. But then 5 years on, in 2023, another institute did a survey in some of the city, and then also show still this time among the students, the active intolerant students increase. Even a lot of them actually think our state ideology can be replaced. Now, another interesting survey, as a background of what we are doing, is that there's another national survey done among the students nationwide by a center at the State Islamic University. It shows that among the students there, the Muslim students have the least interreligious interaction compared to the other religious students. And also, similarly, the least inter-ethnic interactions. I think in terms of the interreligious interactions, I think it's understandable in a way because Indonesia is a Muslim majority country. So there's less opportunity to interact with the others. But all of this, in a way, probably also correlate with the high intolerance. So the recommendation from the national survey shows that it is important to have a religious literacy and interfaith education, and then also introducing other religions in Islamic religious education. And as a Christian, I would also say introducing other religions also in other religious education, and then exposing teachers to positive experience of diversity. So, oh, sorry, I use Mac and then now it's Windows. So the cross-cultural religious literacy focuses on 3 competencies. Personal competency, meaning that as a Christian, I need to understand my Christianity well, and then also what my religion teaches me about treating the others. But then it's not enough. I need to have a comparative competency, which means that I need to understand the other religion, but from the perspective of the follower of that religion. So for example, if I want to understand Islam, I need to understand, for example, from Dr. Auli Shihab, who is a Muslim, so that I can understand from their perspective. But then I also need to have a collaborative competency, meaning that I need to be able to work together, to find meeting points, to work together with people of other religion, even though we will remain different. We will have differences in our belief, but we need to be able to work together. Another thing that we actually take into account as well in our developing the program called cross-cultural religious literacy is what is called intergroup contact theory in social psychology. I won't go into this, but basically what we are doing is actually how to deal with prejudice. And there are principles that we need to apply, because it's not just about knowledge, but it's actually about how to fight prejudice and stereotypes. So the international program on cross-cultural religious literacy, we focus on teachers and religious educators. The idea is to develop competencies and skills to build interfaith relations, but then interfaith relations must lead to multi-faith collaborations, because it is collaboration that builds trust, and in so doing to help reduce social hostilities. So we first focus on madrasah teachers because of the suggestion and recommendation from our Muslim friends in the program. Now we have 2 steps. The first step is the online program for the introductory course, and then we have follow-up programs as well from there. So the program, we focus on the online program. We use Zuun, and then also the learning management system. We use Abrahamic religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism as an example. All the Indonesian speakers here is actually Dr. Abdul Muti, Dr. Auli Shihab, and Grand Imam Nasaruddin Umar. They all actually speakers and instructors in our program. So in 2 years, we have a pretty good response. We have more than 5,000 teachers, educators, and more female actually graduated from our program. 2/3 are actually millennials or even younger. We have teaching learning resources. We have video podcasts, for example, from Dr. Auli Shihab, textbooks, and others. And also we run workshops to train the teachers on how they can develop lesson plans and then teach in their classroom. So these are just some pictures of how we do. The workshop also include visiting different religious worship places, because it is important for them to have that experience. For the Muslim teachers to go to a church, and then for the Christian teachers go to a mosque. And then the teachers, after the workshop, they try to do it in the classroom, and then they send a video of how they do it in the classroom to us. So now we are developing a database of how the example of them teaching in the classroom. And partnership is very important. So right now we have 19 education religious institutional partners in Indonesia. Actually, one of them is Ministry of Law and Human Rights, but we have Secretary General of Muhammadiyah, who is our important partner, and another important partner, National Mosque of Istiqlal, Grand Imam Nasaruddin Umar is here. And then this year, one of the things, the result of this is that, for example, the Jews is not a favorite community in Indonesia, but this year, in May, we are able to work together with Dr. Amin Abdul Muti, who is actually a professor at the State Islamic University in Jakarta, and also with National Mosque of Istiqlal. We have a Jewish scholar speaking about anti-Semitism and other things in Indonesia. So I think I will close with this. We understand that how to deal with social hostility needs a collective effort. So partnership is key. Building trust is very important. So we want to make sure that the program also a model of multi-faith collaboration. And for that, I want to thank actually the biggest supporter and partners who are present here, Dr. Alwi Shihab, Dr. Abdul Muti, and then Grand Imam Nasaruddin Umar, who have been very supportive of this program, and also, of course, Mrs. Ashraf Shahab, wife of Dr. Alwi Shihab, who is very instrumental here. So please help me to thank them.
Dear friends, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizer who invited me to this great event. Thank you for the opportunity for me to speak a few words. I prepared a lot of things about history, but I will be brief. First of all, current situation of religion in Mongolia is very different from the social period. After 1990, just as the local religions of Buddhism and shamanism were beginning to revive, a range of new religious groups entered Mongolia. These included Christianity, new religious movements, and global Buddhist organizations. According to the researchers of Mongolian Buddhism, the Buddhism was introduced and spread throughout the histories of successive Mongolian states 5 times. The earliest introduction of Buddhism was to Mongolia, a Mongolian Hunnu state. At that time, Buddhism was spread not only southern part of Hunnu state, but also in the present territory of Mongolia. Right now, there are about 3,000 monks are in Mongolia. The Mongolian Buddhist monasteries and believers preserving the traditional Buddhist heritage do their utmost studying. I skipped a little bit, quite a bit. I skipped all the history part of Buddhism. He wasn't. As a result of political change in 1990, there were many temples and monasteries reopened. At the present day in Mongolia, the ancient tradition of Buddhism has not only been preserved, but there are about 3,000 monks studying and practicing Buddhism. The Mongolian Buddhist monasteries and believers preserving the traditional Buddhist heritage do their utmost in studying the history of Buddhism and Buddhist culture, as well as in translating Buddhist books, compiling, commenting, and printing, restoring historical monuments. The Constitution of Mongolia states the relationship between state and church is regulated by law. In 1993, the Mongolian parliament passed the law of Mongolia, and it has been regulating a relationship between the state and the church for over 30 years. Moreover, the law of Mongolia on the relationship between state and churches, monasteries states that the state shall respect the dominance of Buddhism in Mongolia.
өөрөөр хэлбэл Монголд Буддийн шашин ноёрхлыг хуулиар баталгаажуулж хамгаалж байгаа хэдий ч Монгол улсын бүх шашин улсад
In other words, even though the dominance of Buddhism in Mongolia is guaranteed and protected by law, at the same time, all religions should equally coexist in Mongolia. And also, all religious organizations need to respect each other and cooperate for the public benefits. For last decades, we're trying to cooperate with Christian, Muslim, and other different religious organizations, but we haven't achieved our goal. The reason this is that we lack knowledge, experience, and approach to work with other religious organizations for the benefit of the public and society. Thus, it's very important and necessary for us to understand religious pluralism in Mongolia. According to my understanding, the religious pluralism directly connects with religious freedom and coexistence in one country. In the past, we used to think that it was not necessary to learn about Christianity, Islam, and other religions, that it's enough to visit each other or celebrate some events and ceremonies together. However, it's not enough to develop religious freedom and coexistence in one country. Therefore, in order to develop religious pluralism, first, all religions should learn and study similarities and differences between each other. Second, frequently make interfaith dialogue with the other religious groups. And third, share good examples and experiences working with the public and society. As a result, we could have practical achievement of developing religious freedom and collaboration of the country. One of the recent greatest example was that 12 different religious leaders made a historical interfaith dialogue with His Holiness Pope Francis during his visit in Mongolia. Moreover, this is a real case of showing that how religious freedom and tolerance are successfully functioning in Mongolia at the present time. Finally, I surely believe that we could more improve the right to freedom of thought, conscious religious in Mongolia in the future. Even though we are facing same difficulties and obstacles at the moment, I'm indeed deeply honored to give this opportunity to be here. Thank you so much.
We thank you for those wonderful thoughts. We are now going to have a presentation from Sunggon Kim, Honorary President of the Asian Conference of Religions for Peace, Republic of Korea.
Good afternoon, everybody. Well, originally in this section we have a 3 speaker, but afterward 2 speaker added. So I have to shorten my paper, but please give me 1 or 2 minutes more as a president. I came from the far away from Korea to make this presentation, okay? Well, first of all, I really thank BYU Law for inviting me to this honorable symposium. Let me briefly introduce myself. I got PhD in religious studies from Temple University in Philadelphia. And since then, I got involved in international interfaith organizations, which is called Religion for Peace, you maybe know. And then I became a politician as a member of a National Assembly in Korea for 20 years. So one of my job is make a bridge between religion and politics. The theme of this BYU Law Symposium this year is the protection of rights to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion in commemoration of the 75th anniversary of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. Originally, I sent my manuscript to this university, but I felt there's something new while participating in this symposium, so let me tell you about this first. I believe that the content of the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights, namely freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, is guaranteed by law in many countries, including Korea. However, whether this religious freedom is actually practiced is a different matter than what is written in law. For example, the activity of the Mormon Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, are legally recognized in Korea by governments. However, Mormonism is still considered heresy, I'm sorry to say this, by Korea's huge established Christian group, and because of this, it is subject to various discrimination. For example, the Mormon Church cannot join the Korean Christian Council of Church, which is called KNCC, which is consultative body of Korean Christianity, because they don't accept Mormonism as a formal member. And unfortunately, the Korean governments cannot force to resolve this problem. Another case, Islam is also a very minor religion in Korea. A few months ago, the Korean government allowed Muslims to build mosques in Daegu, Korea, because freedom of religion is guaranteed by law. However, local residents in Daegu interfered with the construction for various reasons. They even put psychological pressure on Muslims by holding pork parties. You know, pork is prohibited in Islam. At the construction site, it is assumed that there are some religious people who hate Islam behind these demonstrations. I feel sorry for this. Even when Buddhism entered Silla dynasty, a southern country of the Korean peninsula 1,500 years ago, it would have been impossible without Lee Cha-dong's martyrdom. When Christianity, which is now the most influential religion in Korea, was introduced to Korea at the end of the 19th century, there were tremendous oppression by Joseon dynasty, which revered Confucianism. So there were 4 times massacre against Catholicism. Repression of religion is often caused by the misunderstanding of the society's mainstream religions about the new or minor religions. Because mainstream religion accepts the activity of new religion as a challenge to mainstream religion or as a social evil. It is true that many of the same barbaric repression as in the past disappeared after the UN Declaration of Human Rights was announced in 1948, and many countries guarantee religious freedom by law, but many minority religions are still subject to invisible discrimination by majority and established religions. The way to solve this is not possible only by amending the law. By the way, I would like to make a new proposal here to BYU Law and the leaders around the world here in this university. And this is actually not my individual proposal, but the proposal of One Buddhism. I belong to this One Buddhism denominations. It is the creation of a united religions, which is called the UR, as a coalition of interfaith association with equal power to the United Nations, which is called the UN. As you know, World War II cost millions of lives. The political leader of each country realized that there should never be such a horrible war again. So the President of the United States, Roosevelt, proposal created the United Nations in 1945. Of course, it is true that the United Nations has done a lot for world peace and human welfare, but it is also true that it is not exerting as much power as we expect. the power of individual countries is still stronger than that of United Nations. So the superpower, such as United States or Russia, if they start a war, the United Nations cannot control it. In addition, climate change threatens human survival. The goal of the UN strategy of 2050 carbon neutrality in 2050 is very difficult to achieve due to the complexity of interests of each country. Why can't the UN cool down such a global crisis while they have so many countries as its member? The biggest reason is the selfishness of each individual countries. The national interest of one's country immediately come before the survival of Earth. In particular, politicians in each country who are conscious of a vote cannot immediately enforce policies that are contrary to the interests of the people, even if there is a justification for humanity. In fact, in order to maintain 2050 carbon neutralizations, all countries must push ahead with policies that can reduce carbon, but countries are not implementing them. BYU law is now talking about the law that guarantee freedom of consciousness religions, but I think the more urgent task than this is the enactment of the strong international law that prevents any country from going to war, and that the world can protect the planet from destruction with carbon neutrality. Do you agree? If we don't, when our descendants will die due to climate change, shouldn't all religious people join force to persuade each country to overcome this crisis? Politicians may find it difficult to solve the global crisis because of the interest of each country. But I believe religious people have the courage and conscience to think more about the interests of humankind as a whole and put them into practice than their own country's interest. This is why I will strive to save the planet with all religious people rather than participate in politics again, myself. It is for this reason that I insist on the birth of a UR equal to the UN, and if the UN is difficult to resolve the global crisis due to conflicts of interest among member countries, the UR should step up and have the UN do what it cannot. Traditionally, Buddhism compared the relationship between politics and religion to the two wheels of a cart and the relationship between strict father and loving mother in a family. Just as the two wheels of a cart cannot go forward if it is not balanced, society cannot go forward if politics and religion are not balanced. In addition, at home, children can grow up to become humans with both justice and love only when a strict father who teaches justice to their children and a benevolent mother who teaches love work together. Politics is the role of a father in a country, and religion is the role of a mother in a country. There is now United Nations, a coalition of politics, but the coalition of religions, which I call UR, is still very weak in power. Of course, there are many interfaith cooperation organizations such as Religion for Peace, but their influence is less than 1% as compared to the United Nations. This is, I assume, why we have no peace on earth today. Last page. For reference, there has long been a yin and yang idea in East Asia. This is based on the philosophy of I Ching, which was created thousands of years ago. And its content is that everything in the world is made up of yin and yang, or minus or plus. For example, if men are yang, women are yin. If daytime is yang, night is yin. If summer is yang, winter is yin. Here, yin and yang are opposites to each other, but in fact, they are in complementary relationship. When the balance of yin and yang is broken, the human body gets sick and the peace of family and society broken. I brought here the taegukgi. Please. Let me see. Okay. This is our national flag. I didn't bring this not because I'm patriotic, but because to explain the yin and yang philosophy. The taegu, which is called the Tai Chi in Chinese language, the red part is the yang, and blue part is yin. And the four bars symbolized heaven and earth, and fire and water. Some people say the red part is North Korea, and blue part is South Korea. But I don't want to explain in politics. Anyway, in comparison to this yin and yang philosophy, politics is yang and religion is yin. So the UN, if the UN is yang and the UR is yin. So yin and yang should help each other with equal power, but now there is only UN on earth in this world and no UR, which is like a family with only father without mother. How poor their children is. This is why our world is now very sick. Therefore, our religious people should join hands in hand to build the UR so that the United Nations and United Religions can function properly for peace on the planet. Lastly, I suggest to BYU Law, we have a founder of the BYU Law. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We thank you. Our concluding speaker will be Bataa Mishigish, the chair of the Department of Religious Studies, the Institute of Philosophy in the Mongolian Academy of Sciences.
But first of all, I would like to thank all of you, scholars and the religious figures, and as well as students who are helping us. And thanks goes to, of course, BYU Hawaii Law School, which has been organizing this conference for the last 30 years. And I was able to attend the conference 6 months ago back in Hawaii, at BYU Hawaii. And we are Mongolians, a group of 8 or 7 people here, one of the largest groups representing individual country. I'll be touching upon some general human rights issues and violations, as well as the laws and pacts and treaties that we have joined so far, and then we'll be touching on some challenging issues that we have in Mongolia. All of you know Mongolia is a young democratic country. It is located right between Russia and China, Russian Federation and People's Republic of China. And our 2 immediate neighbors, unfortunately, are not democratic countries. So we will have to, probably you'll have to keep that in mind. And Mongolia is trying to be a democratic nation state in many ways, and one of which is that our promotion of human rights in the country. And the country has a long tradition of Buddhism, which is the major religion, and with a very unique geopolitical location. It has only a population of 3.5 million people, and it was a socialist country for 70 years, and where there is no religion and no faith was freely exercised because of the socialist ideology and because of the Soviet political influence on the country. Mongolia became a full member country of the UN in 1961. And since then, it has signed and ratified over 70 human rights treaties and joint conventions, relevant conventions. Mongolia as a nation state has been trying to advance in protecting human rights in many ways. That, of course, includes the freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, the freedom of religion as well. So this is the list of the international conventions and treaties and pacts and protocols that Mongolia has joined with the 2 years. For instance, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights of 1966, Mongolia joined in 1974. So I'm just sharing this with you. It's not going to take long because each and every presenter has only 10 minutes? Yeah, okay. So the question, we in Mongolia, especially in Mongolia, do people have a good understanding of human rights? Answer to that question is the foundation of protecting human rights. Do our schools have a good curriculum on human rights as well? Again, the key questions that we have to answer. Do we have a conducive social environment for protecting human rights? Do we have an effective legal system and institutional framework for protecting human rights? Do we have a just judicial system which is free of corruption? Do we have a resilient national international NGOs that freely operate to protect human rights? Does our government have a sound policies to protect human rights? Lastly, but of course not least, do we protect those who protect human rights? In order to be a democratic nation, so we will have to give practical but good answers to these questions if we believe in human rights and if we protect human rights. To me, protecting human rights means fighting corruption, fighting injustice, fighting inequality, fighting discrimination of any types, fighting environmental degradation, promoting freedom of thought and expression, promoting freedom of faith in religion, and protecting social, economic, and cultural rights. Make sure that each and every citizen of Mongolia must have these rights. So the general framework of Mongolia, how it works, of course, the constitution, which serves as the legal foundation for human rights. And then we have the executive branch, the government of Mongolia, which is responsible for protecting the human rights. And then we do have the national body called National Human Rights Commission. And then this commission is also responsible for monitoring and evaluating implementation process of protecting human rights in Mongolia. What kind of challenges do we have? According to Michelle Forrest, former UN Special Rapporteur, and this report was done in 2019, and generally it says there are sufficient laws that regulate the protection of human rights in Mongolia, but there are issues in the effective implementation of those laws and regulations that aimed at protecting the human rights. And other reports also mention that there are cases of human rights violations in the following areas: human rights of persons with disabilities, and human rights of older women, and other issues like fundamental human rights and principles of non-discrimination and equality. I'll skip the last one. Currently, what do we need to effectively protect human rights in Mongolia? First of all, it's my personal view that we need an in-depth analysis and report on the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, the social, political, legal, ethical, philosophical, religious, as well as cultural contexts in our society. Because human rights issues are closely intertwined with human dignity concerns as a fundamental values, this research and report, we have not done this kind of research and report yet. There are a large number of other human rights reports, produced by the international NGOs and submitted to the government of Mongolia, but so far nothing is found on the freedom of religion, except that the U.S. State Department releases annual report of human rights, the freedom of report on the freedom of religion. Yeah, and I also quote one thing, Ellen Messer's article, "Unity in diversity." Means that the universal practice of human rights awaits recognition, implementation, enforcement in the particular legal codes of states, customary behaviors of peoples at less inclusive social levels. So in a way that I support Messer's message that we all need to be united by the understanding and concept of human rights, as well as still be diverse, very much diverse in our cultures, religion, and other social values as well. So this is the last message. Again, let's be united, but still be diverse, but united by the common values and common beliefs of protecting human rights, and still be very much diverse in many ways. Thank you very much.
Thank all 5 of our speakers. These were wonderfully insightful presentations. As I said before, I wish we could have had an hour each. I think they could have easily taken it, and it would have been very good for us. We have just a few minutes left. In our remaining few minutes, what I'd like to do, what I'd suggest we do, is gather questions for these speakers, and then as you find time during our break and the remainder of the conference, right, that way they can have these questions in their minds. You can approach them and they can answer those. So we'll take a few minutes of questions here in that spirit. Questions for our speakers, for any of them.
Thank you very much, all speakers. It is very stimulating and also illuminating. I'm just wondering, in Korean case, the Protestantism has been quite diverse. I think very frontier of interreligious dialogue from the Protestant groups, and also very evangelical-oriented groups, and also big forces. What I am introducing now is that how, in the Indonesian case, interreligious dialogue or initiative, I think the main religion seems to be initiated. For example, the Muslim may be initiated having interreligious dialogue with the Christian groups and also other religious groups. But I'm wondering whether the new religious movement is initiating, inviting major groups, creating some interreligious dialogue. So if you have any concern for the new religious groups creating some sort of interreligious dialogue matters.
Thank you. Other questions for our speakers? That's right. I don't mind silence, though. I rarely get it at home. So, Let's take one last question here and then we'll adjourn.
It's for our Mongolian, Mr. Mishigish. It's about the herder women, the human rights for the herder women. Can you explain a little bit about that?
We'll actually have you answer just right after here, but since we're already over time. But let's keep that question. Well, great. Well, if you will join me, let's give our speakers one more round of applause.